Hey, folks, it's Lindsey Huddleston back in the building. Another SPS. I don't have a name for what these Wednesdays are. Now that I think about it, but I'm used to naming either a Monday motivation or a post-game event. But here's an opportunity for me to get with a great entrepreneur who's doing some great things in the state of Michigan, particularly in Southeast Michigan and now soon to be mid-Michigan. A guy I've had the pleasure of coming in contact with not too long ago through a mutual friend and young Burton Brown. Shout out to Burt. But I am here with Mr. Chris Jackson. Chris, how you doing, man?
Lindsey, I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, man. I'm really excited about getting with you. And I know that sounds cliche. People say it all the time. But I was like, man, Chris out here getting it in. He's hitting them on all levels. And I just really look at it from the standpoint that I know things about you, but I feel if we have the opportunity to have a conversation, other people can, one, learn about you, but then learn things from you, from the things that you have accomplished and, of course, will accomplish. So with that, I appreciate that. But I remember when I was in corporate America, Chris, a guy who I was working with who was well regarded in the corporation. This is at a Fortune 1 corporation. And I'll never forget, we went out to lunch, really nice place. We were out in California at the time. And he looked at me and he said, "So who is Lindsey Huddleston?" And I was like, what kind of question is that? I was like, who is you? You know what I'm saying? It's like I took it a certain way. But now that I think about it, for me, in reflection, that was a very powerful question because it led to some self-reflection and all that. And I know I'm not trying to have you, going back over your
how
whole
deep
life.
you want me to go? How deep you want me to go, Lindsey? Because I feel like you're being my psychologist. You know what I mean?
No, that's good. Well, it's wherever it takes you. So, for the sake of my question and the viewers, who is Chris Jackson?
Yeah, man. A kid from urban America, man. I'm born and raised in Pontiac, Michigan.
Shout out to the Yak.
Shout out to the Yak, yes, sir. Born and raised there. Was actually afforded an opportunity. I went to Pontiac Northern High School to begin with. Okay. And then was afforded an opportunity to attend Cranbrook, Kingswood. That private school that shows up in 8 Mile that people know about, right?
Hey, man, let's talk for a second. Hey, even rolling up on that campus is an experience, you know? I mean, you guys got, world-renowned artwork all over, but Cranbrook, wow. Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So was afforded a scholarship to Cranbrook. And I can put it into words now, but at the time when I first got to Cranbrook, it cost like $30,000 for students to go there. I was not there, right? I had a scholarship, so I was not paying to go to Cranbrook.
Oh, you didn't pay out of your pocket? You didn't pay that out of your pocket?
I did not pay any of that, not even close to any of it out of my pocket.
Right.
But the thought process was more, because a kid coming from a place like Pontiac is always this thought around, can you make it to the league, or are you going to be an entertainer, right? Or one of the other things that just isn't positive. And when I went to that school, it was more like, why don't you think about owning the team instead of playing for one? Like that was the sentiment amongst the kids at that school by way of who their parents were and what their parents had accomplished.
That was their conditioning.
Exactly right. And so anyway, it kind of set the tone for entrepreneurship for me in a lot of ways. So anyway, ended up going to Hope College to play football, actually, D3 school out in Holland, Michigan, over near Grand Rapids. And walked into a school that I didn't know was necessarily the Ivy League of the Midwest in a lot of ways, right? So I went there to play football. Turns out, all of the, I played football with the CEO from Chuck E. Cheese's son, for instance, right?
Hold on for a second. Hold on. We can't just run over that real quick. You went to what's considered the Ivy League of Michigan. And I just think I just want to pause for a second, too, because what you talked about with your educational experience, Chris, is that being from urban America, Pontiac, you didn't have to leave to go out to the West Coast of Stanford. You stayed within, a certain almost 150-mile radius to go to school at Cranbrook and got this, conditioning along with the other counterparts there. Like, my mother told me a long time ago, I said, my family, when I grow up, I want to be able to work on an ice cream truck. She said, no, baby, you want to own the company. That's one mother talking to her son, but you were conditioned. So then you transition, still staying with the state of Michigan, one of the most highly rated private colleges and Hope College. I just played football with the CEO of 17. That's nothing to be slept on. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you good. Yeah, you're good now.
So you played football with the CEO's son of 17?
Yeah, so at the time, right? But he wasn't the only person that was there, right? You know, the bosses, the Van Handels, all of those folks' kids ended up going to Hope College. And so it was just a different level of exposure, similar to Cranbrook. And I was able to handle it because I had been to Cranbrook, right? Because I had spent a little time in West Bloomfield. But it was a culture shock for a lot of people.
Did your Cranbrook pedigree add some swag to you? So when they would say, well, where, what's your background? And you said Cranbrook, was that kind of a little head crack for them, but that added more, quote unquote, credibility?
Oh, definitely. Right. Part of I used it a lot actually to get out of tickets in high school. You just put out the wrong ID, the Cranbrook ID.
Oh, wow. Check them out. Some of that privilege. Okay.
But it did add some credibility, right? Because, either you came from a family who had known what it obviously was as a school and what it meant to the community, or you came from a place where you watched 8 Mile, right, and you heard Eminem rap about it. So it definitely lended a sense of credibility, I think, in a lot of things, and so it was a cool experience for that reason, right? Hope College, similarly, if you know about it, you know about it, right? I'm not saying it's as popular as maybe Michigan State or Michigan, but it definitely was in certain circles. It definitely added a sense of credibility and validity to what I was on.
Wow. Talk about that experience, because I think, throughout the course of our lives, as a parent especially, opportunities may present themselves where, coming from we didn't grow up too far from each other. I was in Detroit, 7 Mile Evergreen, same experience, if you will. But sometimes opportunities present themselves, and clearly, your family took advantage of that, and you went to Cranbrook. Talk about taking advantage of an opportunity when it comes like that, and seeing the benefit and saying, hey, I'll go with Cranbrook that may be not wildly popular to so many people, and I'll go with Hope College. And you said, it may not be that popular in certain circles, but almost in the right circles, it's that deal. So talk about, I just don't want someone to be listening to this broadcast, Chris, and that there's an opportunity or chance for their child to get the kind of experience that you're talking about, and they not see it for the benefit it can be.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I was definitely rough around the edges, right? Growing up in places like we grew up in. But the thing that I appreciate most about my mom and my dad, in their own way, is they allowed me to be fearless. You know what I mean? Like, somebody asked me a question last month on an interview, and they were really digging into, well, what, allows me or gives me the confidence to do the things that I'm doing, right? Or accomplishing. And it's that I have the ability to be fearless, and I've always had the ability to be fearless, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent. There wasn't ever anything that I felt like I couldn't do and or achieve, or try that was different than the normal, right? And I was celebrated for it, though, right? It wasn't a sense of you aren't doing the right thing. It was always encouragement, which led to the right type of confidence that I think gave me access to tapping into the skills that's allowed me to be successful. You know what I mean? And so Cranbrook and Hope College, for me, was just a stop along that path, of having an access or a feeling of fearlessness to try new things, to be beyond what was normal or considered normal where we come from.
I mean, man, we got a lot to talk about, but we can shut the interview down right there, man. I mean, that right there alone. No, it just says so much as far as what I was hoping that someone could get. I mean, you talk about, let's be honest, our community has its strength, but sometimes we don't celebrate the right thing. And here you are being celebrated for going to, let's just face it, what we may call a white school in Cranbrook, or going out there with the white folks in Hope College. And here you are as a byproduct of Cranbrook and Hope College, and you're making all kind of moves that we'll get into. So I thought that was something to be said. question as a follow-up. Where did your parents get that from? I mean, we always talk about what the child has, but where did they bring that from? Because that could have been internal conflict in the household. That could have been one parent feeling one way, one parent feeling a different way, or whatnot. I mean, I'm just curious to know.
And then, look, I mean, it was two very different backgrounds, right? My father, let's just say he was into the streets, right? And my mother was an entrepreneur as a hairstylist in her own right. And she did the thing that wasn't very popular. And I don't know that she was celebrated from doing the unpopular things as she was growing up, given the climate that she grew up in, that entire generation grew up in, right? Because it was that migration that happened from the South to the North. And it was all about getting a job and or going to college.
No. Getting a good job.
Quote unquote good job. Right. Yeah. Quote unquote. Getting a good job and or going to college. But entrepreneurship wasn't celebrated then, right, in our community, the way that it is now, understandably so, because they were just looking for opportunities, right, to be better. And so, you know, my dad was an entrepreneur in his own right, not in the all the way legal ways. You know what I'm saying?
And let's put it this way: he wasn't paying his taxes.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. He wasn't paying his taxes. I think he's caught up now, though, for anybody who.
Yeah, all right, right. I don't know what you got your limitations is right now.
No doubt. And then my mom was an entrepreneur. So they had already practiced this notion of doing what isn't the normal way of going about living life, at least during the time in which everyone's society had a perspective on what that actually meant.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, or if you are picking up this broadcast later, this is Lansing Pharaohs with SPS Sports Psychology Solutions. Sitting here with my guy Chris Jackson, who is the owner and team president of the Lansing Pharaohs, also the owner of Sticky marijuana operations facilities, doing some great things. And I want to stay on this note because I had this question ready. You know, talk about, before we move into Sticky, and talk about the Lansing Pharaohs. And I also want to tell anyone, please, if you have any comments or questions, you can leave a note. We'll definitely make sure we respond to it in kind. Talk about the pros and cons of entrepreneurship. You kind of touched on them. You talked about, you know, kind of like your mother was a trailblazer before you already. She was like the first one through the ceiling as far as trying to, you know, get this concept out. But talk about in 2021, hell, getting ready to go into 2022, if you will, some of the pros and cons of entrepreneurship, and then we'll get into your endeavor with Sticky and, of course, the Lansing Pharaohs, too.
Yeah, no doubt. Some of the pros and cons, man. I would say a pro and a con is that you bet on you, right? Like, literally, you rely on your ability to perform, to execute. I tell my little brothers all the time, I wish I could pay the bills purely on intentions, you know what I'm saying? and wanting to do the thing. But as an entrepreneur, you really rely on you to do the things. And so if you don't execute, if you don't perform, it's not only the case that you don't eat, but the people who rely on you to run the business then can't feed themselves and or their family, right? So it's a gift and a curse, because I would rather bet on me than anybody else. But at the same time, if I don't perform, there's a lot of people who may be hurt or get hurt in the process, right? So that's one of the pros and cons, I guess. Another pro is a sense of freedom, right? And I don't mean freedom in a way where you have to have a lot of money necessarily. I mean freedom that you literally are controlling your calendar, and to have the ability to control your calendar in a lot of ways gives you the opportunity to control your life. If you want to work, it's because you feel like working. You know what I mean? And so that sense of freedom is really important to me, and I'll exchange money and comfort in exchange for a sense of peace, a sense of freedom. And that's what I get being an entrepreneur. I thrive under pressure, and that goes back to my athletic days. So 3-sport athlete, football, basketball, track, and that probably explains why Cranbrook really gave me that scholarship. But for real, I thrive under pressure, and this is the ultimate arena for me, at least, right? Business has become the ultimate sport, and it's a sport without rules in some ways, right? Rules are constantly changing. The goalpost is constantly moving. So how do you adjust? How do you make those halftime adjustments, right? That allow you to stay out in front of the competition. And one of the cons though is that in sports, you know who your competition is. It's not always that way in business, right? Sometimes you don't know whether it's friend or foe, right? You look across from you, it could be a friend, it could be an ally, it can be someone that's trying to take your spot.
I mean, you can't just go to the film session. You can't go watch the game, and do a scouting report, huh?
Right. Until and then after you may have a chance to recover, or it may be too late. Who knows? But that's one of the cons to it, right? You don't know where one of the cons is that everybody experiences it, but if I'm working for a company as an employee, I don't have to know about it. It's not my responsibility, right? I don't have to have the answers. As the owner of a company, you have to. So there's always this healthy sense of skepticism that exists in those ways.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said. You said a lot of great things in this, but, early on you talked about people make the assumption that entrepreneurship means you're rich and wealthy out the gate. And you talked about that freedom. I think it's something to be said, man. Like when I reached out to you, like, hey, Chris, let's do this. And the biggest back and forth we had was when we go do it, about schedule. And so many times, I remember in particular when I was in corporate America, so many things that happen in your personal life, you have to relate it to, okay, how is this going to affect my professional life? How is this going to affect my job? Can I go on that broadcast? Can I say this? All these type of things. So I think people really miss that part about being able to say what you want to say. And, I've been in corporate America, 6 figures, company credit card, all that. However, everything I did was beholden to them in that. So when I left that experience, to be able to have the freedom to be able to say, this is what I want to say on my own platform, et cetera, is huge. And it doesn't mean that those financial goals aren't there and are not, far from being met. But I just think people miss that part, Chris, of what you just touched on as far as those other freedoms. Can you just kind of, drill down that a little bit more before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, really what it comes down to is, as the entrepreneur, are you willing to deal with the consequences of whatever it's said, right? Because no one is going to fire you necessarily. Everybody has people that they're beholden to some extent, right? Our consumers, our patients, particularly at Sticky. Eventually, what will be our fans of the team, I report to them. So everyone reports to somebody else, but I don't necessarily have to sugarcoat the things that I believe, because again, like I'm willing to rise and or sink betting on me and how I feel about different situations. And so you're right, in corporate America, even as a player on a team, right? You're expected to behave in a certain manner. The name on the front of the jersey, I guess, versus the name on the back of the jersey, for a sports analogy. I set the tone, right? So I have an opportunity to build the culture with others, right? But at the end of the day, the buck stops with me, whether we're successful or failures. But I have an ability to build a culture, and Sticky, my partners and I have an opportunity to build a culture where, at the very least, even if we weren't successful, at the very least, we know we did it our way, right? The Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, did it my way, baby. When you start doing entrepreneurial work, that song means so much, don't it? Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's an excellent segue, and I appreciate you sticking around on that topic a little bit more. Let's talk about Sticky. That Sticky Icky. I think for those who are some have a familiarity. When you hear the word Sticky, you know exactly. Others probably like, what's Sticky? What do you mean, Sticky? Talk about Sticky. Introduce this, your brand to us.
What's crazy is that I was actually running for public office. I ran for city council and state representative back in my hometown. Lost by 40 votes. It was tragic.
Oh no.
Tragic. Yeah. But I would never replace the experience. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. First and foremost, running for office is one of the hardest things you'll ever do.
You said city council.
City council, and then I ran for state representative.
Okay.
So there's that. But then there's also this notion of building relationships and understanding politics in a way that I otherwise would never have understood it. And it's helped me a ton in a number of different ways. So anyway, my partner, Jake, who had already owned Sticky Ipsy in Ypsilanti. It was medical at the time. He bought it about 3 years ago. So this is about 2.5 years ago, maybe. And basically after I got through running for office, was just like, hey, you got a skill set. Can you help us expand? Can you be our public facing person? Can you help us with government relations? And in a small business, we do whatever we need to do, but it just was kind of identifying lanes. You know what I'm saying? So I can run a retail, but my sweet spot are the things that I just mentioned. And so I said, absolutely, got it. Fast forward.
What year was this?
Shucks, man. End of 2018. Okay. After I lost the election. Yep.
Okay.
So fast forward though, we have an operating location in Ypsilanti, Sticky Detroit. We actually was operating for about a year, right before the pandemic started. It was crazy. We had done all this work to get the location to be what we needed it to be. And then the pandemic happened, and then it was curbside only. And then luckily, cannabis became an essential product in the United States.
So you're able to
most states. Got mad lucky. We were worried. We we about to have to shut it down. Right. But it worked out in our favor, and we ran that store for about a year. We're actually moving to River Rouge. Got another one opening up in Battle Creek and Southfield here in the next couple of months.
Wow.
Cultivation facility coming in Lansing, and things have been really good. So so Sticky is your neighborhood, in this case provisioning center, but you know it as a dispensary. A lot of people. Right. It's your neighborhood dispensary. We want to be of the community. We want to do right by the people in the community. Part of the reason, if not the main reason, other than being an entrepreneur, that I'm in the cannabis industry, is economic empowerment for communities of color and criminal justice reform. Given where we come from, without those two things, I'm not interested in being in the industry. Yeah, the money is cool. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. It was a previously prohibition industry, and folks with our skin tone don't usually get an opportunity to participate in things like this. But that's cool. But without the other side to it, the lasting impact, I'm just not interested. So it's been a good ride so far.
Yeah, you answered so many questions that I have when you deal with the quote unquote moral question that I'm sure that you were probably faced with when you got out in front of just having to face it when it had this criminalization that was connected to it that is so slowly being chipped away. But I'm just curious, how did you respond to that one question when that same potential voter that you knocked on their door and asked for their vote, and then you turn around and you represent this brand that, in my view, has been totally misunderstood and criminalized, so you see where I stand with it. But how did you represent that when Miss Brown said, baby, I was going to vote for you for city council, and what you doing out here with this sticky icky,
Right. Well, you know what, though? So at the time, I wasn't even the owner in the company when I ran for city council.
Right.
But I was a pro-cannabis candidate, right? Because in my mind, let's do what makes sense. There's about to be a lot of money and opportunity by way of this industry. And the sooner we can get over the things that we were conditioned to think and believe about cannabis, the better off we'll be even as a community. And so I'm sure it hurt me when I was running for office. And what's crazy is that, it was legalized at the end of, or adult use was legalized at the end of 2018. So I think I was a little bit ahead of my time.
For a second. But it may have hurt you with some people, but it probably helped you with some people too, though, right?
This is true, but I think throughout the course of 2018, especially in, predominantly Black communities that have pastors who are anti-cannabis in particular.
The influence they had on the voting block.
Especially the older votes, right? The older individuals who voted. I don't think it helped me, but it became more normalized as 2018 progressed, and then it became law, right? So I think I was right before my time when it came to that, to be honest with you.
I got you. Very good. Very good. Well, that's one way that you have definitely showed your ability to be a bona fide, legitimate business person out here. You and I met by way of Bert Brown. Shout out to my guy, Bert. I wish I had a picture I could put up. But Bert's probably against me putting up pictures. He wants to be elusive. Bert don't want to be seen or known. He's just making those deals happen, whatnot.
Hey, find a picture and put him up there, man. He need to be out here.
Yeah, shout out to Bert Brown and his consulting services. We'll make sure we do that before this is over. But, he introduced us a while ago. And, of course, my passion, at this point in my life is definitely sports. And talking about you bringing an opportunity to Mid-Michigan, to Lansing, that is in the Lansing Pharaohs. And when we got that out there, we put that word out there. We got a great response from the community, not just here in Mid-Michigan, but I think there was a huge buzz. But before we even get to the Lansing Pharaohs, I know the answers to this, but for those who are listening and chiming in, there are some folks. Tell me more about Lansing Pharaohs. What group is it with as far as professional entity? And let's just kind of get into that right now.
Yeah, man. So the Lansing Pharaohs are a team, a professional basketball team, a part of the TBL. The TBL is the basketball league, and it is an alternative American professional basketball league. So TBL started about 4.5 years ago. In year 5, this would be year 5. There's 28 teams playing right now across the United States. And there were 2 teams in Michigan. The way that the relationship actually came about is because, and then if you want to, I guess, put it in perspective, the TBL would be anywhere between like AA and AAA ball, right? So probably a tier under the G League for professional players, professional basketball players, an alternative to having to go overseas, which really wasn't a thing anyway during the pandemic. And so folks like Jerome Williams, the Junkyard Dog, he owns the Las Vegas team. Steve Francis from Houston, the Houston Rockets, the franchise, he owns the Houston team. Cliff Livingston, who was on The Last Dance, a part of that Bulls team, he's coaching one of the teams out in Kokomo. So, a league that's really getting some notoriety and really bringing in the right people. And so I wanted to actually approach the league about being a sponsor for Sticky because it's a progressive league. Mm-hmm. And so if I can start to get Sticky out there, in cannabis and really, to your point, change some of the thought process and conditioning around it, I wanted to do it through sports. So THC Sticky was a little bit soon for the end, and I'm working on the league, but it was a little soon. Mm-hmm. So put them in touch with a CBD brand, figured out a relationship there. Then basically they approached me and said in so many words, let's talk about maybe opening up another market in Michigan. So, there was the opportunity to put another one in Detroit because there's a team in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And then there was an opportunity to put one, in mid-Michigan toward West Michigan. And then I thought about Lansing. I thought about the fact that there isn't a professional sports basketball team in Lansing currently, but also how rich in tradition basketball was and is to Lansing, right? I mean, it's the house that Magic built, right? Yep. During my time of running for public office, I spent a lot of time in Lansing, built a lot of cool relationships. And so it was just like, what? Not only does it make the most business sense, but from a love of basketball perspective, it makes the most sports sense to put the team here in Lansing. And, I was fortunate enough to have, certain people co-sign me, yourself, Rep Anthony, the mayor's office, all the way to Des Ferguson, right, with Moneyball, right? They were all a part. Absolutely, they were all a part of my announcement that came out about a month ago that we were going to be bringing a team, and then the real work started. And so here we are, tipping off in the spring of 2022, just trying to bring all of the right things together.
I love it. I love it. Before we go any further, I was able to track down the elusive
Burns
Brown. That's our guy right there. He's going to watch this. Now a partner at Kelly Cawthorn. Shout out to Kelly Cawthorn, lobbying service. When I was in my corporate life, they were helping me with some of the work that I was doing. But Burton's a great dude, doing great things. So anyone who's looking for some government relations representation, you're not going to find anybody who knows more about the ins and out of Lansing, the federal system, and he's brought us together, and just a good all-around dude. My guy right there. The three of us.
Listen to that commercial. Can you be my spokes guy?
Hey man, hey, we put it together. Ain't no telling what we put together after this. But I think at the heart of it, though, to your point, look at all of us entrepreneurial spirits that, as let's face it, three black men who could make phone calls and connect with each other and put people together. And it doesn't have to be one of those, well, let me check with somebody else first. When Bert was like, hey, man, I need to put you with my guy, Chris, I said, well, Bert is calling. I got to get with my guy. You and I hit it off instantly. You know what I'm saying? So You had those things going on, man. But I'm down to support what's going on. Talking about the Lansing Pharaohs, man, I know there's probably going to be some young people listening to this broadcast. What opportunity are you providing people as it relates to a career in professional basketball? Let me just be straight up with that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the TBL is a league where players get paid to play, first and foremost, which means there's more competition, right? There's more responsibility. There's more expectation that comes with that in any capacity. But we'll have tryouts, looking to potentially do an exhibition this summer. We'll have tryouts, maybe one in the fall, a couple in the winter, leading up to, training camp that will probably start in February, and then the season likely tipping off in March. And so, if you're interested, LansingPharaohs.com is actually a website that you can go to. Our email is there. Our phone number is there. Please subscribe, keep up with what we have going on. But listen, the goal is to win. But not only is the goal to win, but we want to do it in a way where we give back to the community that ultimately supports us, right? So, our players will be expected not only to perform on the basketball court, but to perform off of the court, right? Because it's really important.
What do you mean by that when you say that, Chris? When you say perform off the court?
Community events. It means going to schools. It means, doing field trips, doing camps that don't cost the kids anything to be able to participate. It means, being a part of other community organizations and doing what we can to ultimately give back in the way that I believe a professional sports team should, but any business that exists in the community should. And so that will be an expectation. And you can look forward to it, Lansing, that you will see Lansing Pharaoh apparel everywhere. And it's not just because, we anticipate a lot of fans are going to support us, but it's because our players and our staff are going to be part of the Lansing community.
Part of, and I thank you for that, part of what you and I have done in our introduction and me making some introductions is dealing with the question of, and you kind of summed up in everything you said, but just pretty much what's different about this endeavor compared to past endeavors of people trying to bring professional basketball to Mid-Michigan. And if anyone's listening, they can hear your credibility, your success as an entrepreneur and all those other things, but just in the direct response to that question, what do you say?
No, I think to your point, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's when you pay players, there's an expectation and or a responsibility that comes along with being a professional basketball player. And to do it at the highest level, it takes discipline. It takes teamwork. It takes getting rid of the ego, right? To ultimately achieve the larger goal, while we help people accomplish whatever goals that they set out to accomplish, right? And move on to higher levels of basketball potentially. Not only that, but How can you exist in the community and not be of the community in a way in which you give back to it, right? Like it baffles me the amount of businesses that come from outside of the community. They participate, they make money, and then they leave. The owners leave, go back home, having not given back to the community that they expect people to be a part of, helping them succeed and exist. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's the difference. The difference is that, not only are we going to be there, but we're going to be visible off the court. And that's really important. The other thing, and maybe you were going to ask me about it, is that the logo, the Pharaoh, it came about in a way where, I had always liked the thought of royalty associated with sports, the kings, the monarchs, the royals, etc., etc. And there was an opportunity, I'm unapologetically Black, right? Doesn't mean I'm anti anybody else. I'm just, pro my folks. And so my perspective was, well, why not give people the opportunity to indirectly learn or want to go learn more about our heritage, right? And a pharaoh, we hear a lot about royalty in Western civilization, but rarely do we hear about royalty associated with sports in on the Eastern hemisphere. So my hope is that, indirectly people look at the logo and they want to either learn more or they appreciate it for what it is. Actually the earliest script of the word Lansing was actually used by a 5th dynasty pharaoh. And it was called the papyrus Lansing, or the Lansing papyrus, one way or another.
Wow.
And literally it was about why being a scriber or a writer was the best thing that you could ultimately be in life. It was really a joke in that way, but I thought that it was cool that the Lansing Pharaohs, and this is before I chose the name, by the way, that a pharaoh had used the word Lansing in some capacity even prior to the team coming to Lansing, Michigan. So, yeah.
That's excellent information. There's one other person I want to acknowledge. I know we talked about Bert and what he's brought to the table, but got to give a shout out to Mo Benson, Maurice
Absolutely.
Benson. Mo,
Absolutely.
Good friend of mine, good friend of yours, such an ambassador. Shout out to him. He's out dealing with the PBL right now. He's, following through on some pro opportunities, doing a great job. But he's been a great ambassador, consultant, and just an all-around good dude. And I wanted just to acknowledge him for all that he's doing. I'm all about giving them their roses while they're here. Well, listen, Chris.
Listen. I'm working on getting Mo back home. So hopefully
you trying to get him back home?
I'm trying to get him back home.
You want to have something for him. Hey, he can't lose right now. He got the thing going on, and the only reason he's not home now because it ain't 2022.
He's
but
you exactly bring him right, home,
get him here and have a great opportunity for him. But you've done so many great things in this time that we had, and I think anyone who is craving knowledge, trying to get more, this is a great place for them. So with the time we have, just give me overall perspective of where you want to see things going forward with your businesses, your endeavors, and just what's on the horizon for you. We know about the TBL and the Lansing Pharaohs. We know about Sticky and its growth, but just in closing, where are things going? Where will things be? And what other, inspirational things can you share for our audience?
I mean, and I'm available, man. I'm all about, I'm not a hoarder of knowledge. The more people that know what I know, right, the more opportunity we have to break generational curses. You know what I mean? And so, particularly economically, there was a time in history where it was important for our ancestors to fight for civil rights because we didn't have any. But I argue that we fought too hard on the side of civil rights and not enough on the side of economic rights and opportunities. And so now is the time to fix that part of the community, because now people have the ability to vote whether or not they want to. That's their freedom, their decision. But when it comes to economical systems that hold us back as colored people, those are the things that I think we really need to start focusing on. So I say all of that to say I'm not a hoarder of knowledge. I'm willing to share. I'm busy. I got to make money to feed my family too. However, I'm certainly willing to put some time aside for folks who are serious about, progressing in whatever way that they're trying to progress. That's first and foremost. The reason for, there's this synergy that happens between music, between entertainment, sports and entertainment, and cannabis, right? So I've been working really hard to change the narrative. If we can, we did a Motor City cannabis and music panel not that long ago. There are people now who can start to make money from their likeness in regard to, especially if you're an entertainer or a music artist, when it comes to cannabis and other things for that matter, right? How rich should Nelly be right now because of Air Force Ones? like examples like that.
5'5" because of Hirachis and the black socks.
Right, exactly. I mean, but again, that's starting to shift now, and entertainers are becoming smarter in that way, right? When it comes to cannabis, instead of illegally standing on the corner, literally, you can have a building on the corner and sell it legally, cannabis, right? And I promise you, the money is better on this side, and I promise you, you don't have to look over your back as often. You know what I mean? So just shifting the thought process just a little bit. When it comes to basketball teams, again, instead of playing for a team, own one, or if you don't want to own one, how about playing for a team with an owner that looks like you, even, right? There's power in that in a lot of ways. And so, just shifting a couple of dials, the way that we think about things is going to go a long way for the people in our community. And I'll tell you this much. What's on the horizon for me, look, I just really hope to leave a legacy that's worth talking about one day, to be honest.
You're doing that, brother. You are definitely doing that.
Well, look, I appreciate it, man. But, running for office taught me a lot of different lessons, right? But particularly, there is no, how do I put it? There is no, we talk about haters all of the time, and we talk about, how people perceive you, whether they like you, whether they don't like you, and whether or not it matters or whatever. There's nothing like looking at a piece of paper, black and white ink, you know what I mean? Like black ink, white paper. And it's telling you that 50% of the people either don't like you or they like somebody else better.
Oh, when you're looking at the numbers once they come in.
When you look at the numbers never lie to you, ever. And so for me, it was eye-opening in that, I can be true to who I am, do things the way I think they should be done, and just deal with what would hopefully be a positive consequence at the end of it all. And enough people think to talk about, the things that I've accomplished positively. But again, no matter what, there's always going to be somebody, like literally, there's always going to be somebody who either likes somebody else better or just dislikes you to the point to where they don't want to support you. And people really have to learn to be okay with that scenario.
Yeah. That's powerful, man. You have dropped nothing but jewels the whole way through. And I'm just grateful to, one, have a platform, to two, to have this relationship with you, and three, to be able to feel that part of what I'm giving back when you talk about legacy is that whether it's my daughter who needs to know what daddy was doing, back in the day while she's like at home just playing right now, she can go on and see this, or someone searching for some knowledge, craving, and they can listen to this podcast, listen to what you're sharing, and they can be bettered by that. And I think that if it's just one person, we've done more than our share, man. So I want to thank you for all that you have done, everything that you're doing and what you're going to do. And I really appreciate our relationship. And any final closing comments before I let you go?
Nah, nothing other than I appreciate you, brother. Keep doing what you're doing. I see it. I appreciate you. The having access to a media platform where people have access to this type of information and these types of conversations is just as important as the person that's dribbling the ball, as the person that's ultimately owning the team up and down the line. So thank you for what you do. And I'm excited about some of the things that we're working on, and I think we got some cool news coming for folks in the near future. So,
hey man, we're gonna keep it cool and get some good news out there. Well, this is Lindsay Ellison with SPS. Sign off with Chris Jackson, who shared a lot, and you'll definitely be hearing more from him. And we'll see you guys in the future. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.